My boss locked the office door to talk to me privately, but before she could say a word, her daughter quietly slipped in behind us, and suddenly I was trapped between two emotions I never expected. The morning begins in a way the narrator has quietly grown to love. The office still half asleep, lights flickering on one row at a time, the soft hum of the AC settling into its usual rhythm. He arrives earlier than anyone else, enjoying the calm before the day swallows everything. The carpet still carries the smell of last night's cleaning chemicals, and the rain from dawn has left the windows glazed with delicate water trails, making everything feel gentler than usual. He sets his bag down, turns on his computer, and is just starting to sip the first warm mouthful of tea when he hears careful footsteps. Not rushed, not heavy, smooth, unhurried, familiar. Footsteps that always make him straighten slightly without understanding why. Ms. Sima enters the office with that quiet elegance she never tries to show. She simply has it. A soft cream shawl draped over her shoulders, hair loosely tied as if she didn't sleep much, and eyes that hold a depth only experience can give. She greets him with a warm, low good morning, the kind of voice that could steady a restless heart. She asks if he can help her reorganize her project files. He nods, maybe too quickly, and follows her to her office. Her workspace always feels different from the rest of the building. Calmer, more personal. A faint scent of jasmine tea lingers in the air, mixing with the leather of her old notebooks. Family photos sit neatly on a shelf, her daughter smiling brightly in most of them, and a soft yellow lamp glows beside her desk, giving the room a warmth the fluorescent hall lights never manage. As they begin sorting papers, they stand closer than expected. Not intentionally, not planned, but just close enough that he grows acutely aware of her presence. Their shoulders almost touch whenever they reach for the same folder. At one point, their hands brush, just a brief, warm passing touch, but enough to make him feel a gentle pull in his chest. She doesn't comment on it, but she pauses for half a second longer than necessary, as if deciding whether to acknowledge the moment or let it drift away. Her voice softens when she steps beside him to explain a report layout, her shawl brushing lightly against his arm. He can feel the delicate warmth of her proximity, the faint rhythm of her breathing mixing with the quiet of the room. It feels like one of those fragile, suspended moments where neither person wants to move too suddenly and break whatever invisible thread is forming. Then she glances at the glass panel of her door, her expression shifting to something thoughtful, almost hesitant. Without explaining, she walks toward the door, turns the lock softly, and lets her hand rest on the knob for a second, as if she's thinking through something she won't say aloud. "I just need a moment without interruptions," she says, not meeting his eyes right away. The words settle in the air, not heavy, but intimate. The room suddenly feels smaller, warmer, quieter. And for the first time that morning, he wonders what she truly needed a moment for. The soft click of the lock seems louder than it should be. It echoes gently through the room, subtle but unmistakable. The narrator hears it, feels it, and tries to steady the sudden shift inside himself. He tells himself it's nothing. Maybe she just needed focus. Maybe someone has been bothering her lately. But even then, he can't ignore the quiet warmth spreading through his chest. Miss Sima turns back toward him with a small, almost apologetic smile. Not the kind of smile someone makes when they're hiding something dramatic, but one that reveals she's carrying more on her mind than usual. She walks toward his desk again, adjusting her shawl as she moves, the fabric flowing softly with each step. She stands beside him to review the project plan. She leans slightly over his shoulder, one hand resting on the back of his chair to steady herself. He feels the light weight of her presence behind him, her warmth, her faint scent of jasmine tea, and the soft brush of her shawl against his upper arm whenever she shifts. Her voice drops into a gentler tone as she explains a detail on the screen. "Look here," she murmurs, her fingers tracing the monitor lightly. "We need to realign the proposal with the new timeline." He nods, though part of him is focused not on the words but on the nearness. The tiny variations in her breathing, the warmth of her hand so close to his shoulder, the way her hair, slightly loosened from its bun, falls forward and grazes his sleeve. She notices him glancing up briefly, and their eyes meet for just a second too long. It's nothing inappropriate, just a moment of quiet acknowledgement, the kind people share when something unspoken is passing between them. To ground herself, or maybe him, she places her hand gently on his shoulder. Not firm, not demanding, just a soft, steadying touch. Her palm is warm. Her fingers rest lightly, as if she's afraid to place too much weight. He feels the warmth of her touch travel straight through him, settling somewhere deep and confusing. For a few seconds, neither of them moves. The office outside continues its mechanical rhythm. Printers humming, distant footsteps, the occasional phone ringing. But in this room, everything feels muted, slowed, softened. Then something interrupts the stillness. A faint sound in the hallway. Footsteps, light, quick, approaching. Too close. Miss Sima lifts her hand from his shoulder instantly, straightening her posture. Her shawl slips back into place, her expression shifting into something composed, almost guarded. The narrator turns toward the door just in time to see the doorknob move. Someone trying it, unaware it's locked. He looks at her, confused. She looks at the door, then back at him, a flash of worry and anticipation crossing her face. For a heartbeat, the air becomes charged. Not romantic, not dramatic, but filled with the unmistakable sense that whatever happens next will change the tone of the entire morning. The handle turns again, and this time, someone on the other side clearly has access to a spare key. The narrator inhales quietly. Miss Sima's fingers tighten around the edge of her desk. The lock clicks, unlocking from the outside. The door gives a soft, metallic click as the spare key slides in from the outside. Before either of them can process the interruption, the handle twists, and the door eases open. Slowly, cautiously, as if the person on the other side isn't sure whether they're welcome. A familiar voice slips through the opening, light and youthful. "Amy? You in there?" Hania, Miss Sima's daughter, steps halfway into the room. Her arrival shifts the atmosphere instantly. She stands framed in the doorway, rain-damp hair clinging slightly to her cheeks, her long scarf loosely draped around her shoulders. There's an openness, a brightness to her presence that contrasts sharply with the quiet, intimate tension that filled the room seconds before. She glances at her mother first, surprised to find the door locked. Then her eyes drift to the narrator, studying him with an easy, curious smile. "Oh, you're both here. I thought the office would still be empty." Her tone is cheerful, almost playful, but there's a subtle perceptiveness beneath it. Hania has always carried a kind of youthful intuition, never intrusive, but sharp enough to notice when something feels different. The narrator forces a polite smile, trying to act as though nothing unusual was happening. "Good morning," he says, quietly clearing his throat. Hania steps further inside, her shoes making soft, quick taps against the floor. She tucks a lock of hair behind her ear, a habit he's seen in her photos on the shelf, and shoots him a friendly grin. "I didn't expect to run into you this early." Meanwhile, Miss Sima's reaction is far more layered. Her initial expression, surprise, shifts into a tightness around her eyes, almost protective. She stands straighter, her shawl pulled a bit more firmly around her shoulders, her voice steady but softer than usual. "Hania, you should have called," she says gently. "I thought you were at home." Hania shrugs, stepping fully into the room and closing the door behind her without thinking. Just felt bored, and a little lonely." Her voice dips slightly, still bright, but with hints of vulnerability she tries to hide. She moves toward the narrator's desk automatically, perching casually on its edge, her knee swinging lightly in the air. The closeness is accidental, innocent, but the moment her knee grazes his arm, he feels a small, involuntary shift inside himself. Not romantic attraction, nothing inappropriate. Just the awareness of being physically between two women who affect each other's worlds in ways he's just beginning to understand. Hania's eyes flick from him to her mother, catching the tension she walked into. "Did I interrupt something?" she asks, half joking, half actually wondering. The narrator opens his mouth, but Miss Sima answers first, a little too quickly. "No, nothing. We were just discussing work." Hania lifts an eyebrow. Not suspicious, just amused at her mother's overly formal tone. Right work, she says with a small smile. There's affection in her voice, but also a touch of knowingness. The narrator watches both of them, suddenly aware that the locked door, the soft closeness moments earlier, and the unexpected presence of her daughter have collided in a way he wasn't prepared for. Everything feels delicate now, like one wrong word could shift the dynamic entirely. Hania's arrival hasn't just interrupted the morning. It's reshaped it. The small office, already warm from the closed door and earlier tension, suddenly feels even smaller with Hania inside. She brings a different kind of energy, lighter, more spontaneous, and it mixes strangely with the quiet emotional current that had been flowing moments before her arrival. She shifts on the edge of the narrator's desk, swinging her legs gently, her scarf sliding down one shoulder. She doesn't seem to notice how close she has placed herself. Her knee bumps his arm again, lightly, unintentionally, but the contact sends a brief ripple through the air. He tries to move slightly to the side, not wanting to seem uncomfortable, but not wanting to seem overly comfortable either. It's a careful balance, and he isn't sure if he's doing it right. Hania notices his small shift and flashes a quick grin. "Oh, relax," she teases playfully. "I'm not going to steal your desk." Her tone is light, innocent, but the narrator sees something different in the corner of his eye. Ms. Sima. She watches them quietly from her desk chair, hands folded, face composed. But her eyes, those give her away. There's a softness there, mixed with a protective instinct and something deeper, something almost fragile. Not jealousy, not possessiveness. More like a mother trying to understand where her daughter's interest ends and where the boundaries should begin. The narrator can feel her gaze on him, warm but unreadable, and he sits up slightly straighter. Trying to ease the tension, he starts talking about the project they were working on. Hania listens, but her attention drifts between him and her mother as though she's picking up on unspoken cues. At one point, she leans in to see the folder he's holding, placing her hand lightly on his sleeve to steady herself. It's an innocent gesture, but gentle enough that he feels the warmth of her touch even through the fabric. Her perfume is different from her mother's, lighter, citrusy, carrying the freshness of someone who hasn't yet learned how heavy life can get. She looks at the papers, but her mother looks at her, and the narrator feels caught in an emotional crossfire he didn't choose, but can't escape. The moment stretches, not tense in a dangerous way, but charged in a quiet, intimate, complicated way. Eventually, Hania breaks the silence. "So, what were you two doing with the door locked?" Her mother inhales sharply, but calmly. "Work," she says with a small smile. "Just work." Hania tilts her head, studying her mother's expression. She says softly, as if she's noticed something but chooses not to say it. Then she turns to the narrator again. "You always come early, don't you? Amy says you're the only one she can rely on in the mornings." The narrator glances at Ms. Sima. Her eyes drop for a moment, betraying a quiet vulnerability, as if Hania has unknowingly revealed more than intended. Wanting to shift the atmosphere, he offers to make tea. Hania hops off the desk, brushing past him, her hand lightly grazing his as she accepts the cup he pours. A second later, he hands a cup to Ms. Sima, their fingers touching just briefly. The three of them sit together now, cups of tea warming their hands, the room filled with the gentle clinking of spoons and a quiet that feels fragile. It isn't an awkward silence. It's something more layered, a silence filled with thoughts none of them are saying out loud. Hania breaks it first. "Amy works too much," she sighs with dramatic flair, leaning back against the narrator's desk. "She needs someone young and kind to help her. Someone like—" She pauses, then points directly at him with a playful smile. "Him." The narrator nearly chokes on his tea. Miss Sima shoots her daughter a warning look, gentle but unmistakable. "Hania, don't tease. He already does more than enough." But Hania isn't done. She tilts her head, studying the narrator's face as if trying to read something inside him. "I'm just saying, he seems like the type who wouldn't let you drown in work." Her mother exhales softly, a mix of amusement and the faintest discomfort. Hania, the narrator tries to help. It's okay, he says with a laugh. I don't mind the workload. But the moment he says it, he sees something flicker across Miss Sima's expression. A quick, vulnerable softness, as if she appreciates his effort more deeply than she expected herself to. Hania crosses her arms, shrugging like a rebellious child, though her eyes hold a deeper emotion, concern. I just get worried. You're always tired, she says to her mother quietly. I thought maybe today we could all have breakfast together. I didn't want you alone. The narrator feels the intimacy of the moment deepen. Hania's earlier energy softens. The playful teasing dissolves into genuine emotion. She glances at him, as if embarrassed for revealing more than she meant to. To distract herself, she reaches for her teacup. Her fingers brush his, lightly, just for a moment. A spark, not romantic, but undeniably human. Before he can react, Miss Sima reaches for her own cup, and their hands meet too, her fingers grazing his wrist, warm and steady. Her touch stays half a second longer than necessary, and the difference between their touches settles into his awareness. Hania's touch felt spontaneous. Her mother's, intentional. He swallows quietly. The conversation drifts into memories. Hania talking about childhood school days, her mother adding small corrections, both of them revealing the closeness of their bond through tiny, unfiltered stories. The narrator listens, smiling, but senses a deeper undercurrent. Hania's loneliness, Sima's exhaustion, something fragile between them both. At one point, Hania asks softly, "Do you think Amy works too much?" The narrator hesitates, caught between honesty and caution. "I think she carries more than people realize," he says gently. "And she doesn't always ask for help." Miss Sima looks at him then, really looks, her eyes warm with appreciation and something tenderer, something she tries to hide. The moment feels like it's balancing on the edge of something delicate. Not dangerous, just deeply human. The kind of moment where one person's honesty can tilt the entire room into a new emotional direction. It starts with a quiet sniff, barely noticeable, but enough for both the narrator and Miss Sima to turn toward Hania. She's looking down at her hands, twisting the end of her scarf around her fingers. Her earlier brightness has faded into something softer, more vulnerable. "I didn't come here to tease," she says quietly. I just didn't want to be alone at home today." The room stills. The narrator watches as her shoulders drop slightly, the weight she's been carrying slipping into view. She isn't crying, not exactly, but her voice trembles in that way people have when they're trying very hard not to. Miss Sima's face softens instantly. "Hania, why didn't you tell me?" Hania shrugs, wiping under her eye with the back of her hand. "It's silly. Just one of those days, I guess." She forces a small smile, but it quivers. The narrator sees something shift inside Miss Sima. That instinctive maternal protectiveness mixed with guilt, love, and the quiet fear that she's been too consumed with work to notice the small storm inside her daughter. She stands and crosses the room. Her movements are slow, gentle, almost cautious, as if approaching a fragile creature. She touches Hania's shoulder first, fingers brushing lightly, reassuringly. Then she pulls her daughter into a soft embrace. Hania leans into it immediately, her forehead resting against her mother's shoulder. The narrator watches the way Miss Sima holds her. One hand on the back of her head, the other rubbing slow circles on her arm. There's such tenderness in the gesture that he feels his own chest tighten, moved by the quiet intimacy of their bond. "I should have been home this morning," Miss Sima whispers. "You're here now," Hania replies, her voice muffled. He feels like an intruder, but at the same time, they both look at him as if they don't mind him witnessing this. Hania lifts her head slightly, her eyes damp but calm. Without thinking, she reaches for the narrator's hand. Not flirtatiously, not even consciously. Just seeking stability, connection, something warm to hold on to. Her fingers slide into his lightly, warm, uncertain, human. He freezes for a second, unsure what to do. Then, gently, he closes his hand to support her, careful, respectful, steady. Miss Sima notices. She looks at their joined hands, then at him, and something inside her melts, not with jealousy, but with gratitude. A kind of soft acceptance that he has become part of this quiet moment. She places her own hand on top of theirs. 3 hands, layered gently, a silent circle of comfort. For a moment, none of them speak. Hania's breathing steadies. The narrator feels their combined warmth under his palm. Miss Sima lets out a breath she had been holding all morning. This isn't romance. This isn't confusion. This isn't a triangle. It's an emotional release. Something that had been building quietly beneath the surface for all 3 of them. The out-of-control moment isn't wild or dramatic. It's simple. Feelings overflowing, walls lowering, all of them seeking connection in the same fragile space. And when their hands finally part, none of them are the same as they were a few minutes ago. The emotional intensity gradually settles, like ripples smoothing across water after a stone has been thrown. The office feels quieter now, the air no longer heavy with unsaid thoughts but softer, gentler, as if the room itself understands that something important has just unfolded. Hania sniffles once more, then pulls back slightly from her mother, wiping under her eyes with the sleeve of her shirt. "Sorry," she murmurs. "I didn't mean to make a scene." The narrator shakes his head immediately. "You didn't," he says softly. "You were just honest." Feels like the right thing to say, not too bold, not too distant. Hania gives him a small, grateful smile. Miss Sima sits beside her daughter, not letting go completely, her hands still resting lightly on Hania's back. Her thumb moves in slow, steady motions, soothing, grounding. "I should have noticed you were feeling this way," she says quietly. "You notice more than you think," Hania replies, leaning her head gently on her mother's shoulder. "I just needed both of you today." The words hang in the air. Simple, innocent, but filled with truth. The narrator feels a warmth rise in his chest. Not romantic warmth, not longing, something more like belonging, like being invited into a space he had never expected to be part of. Wanting to give them a moment, he stands slowly. "I'll give you two some space." But Hania reaches out, lightly touching his wrist. "Stay, please." He hesitates, then sits again, this time closer but still respectful. The 3 of them form a small circle near the edge of the desk. Rain continues to patter softly against the window, adding a tender rhythm to the moment. The conversation that follows is gentle, the kind that only happens after emotions spill over. They talk about Hania's loneliness, her fears about the future, the pressure she sometimes feels trying to live up to expectations. They talk about Ms. Sima's exhaustion, her guilt, and how she often tries to be strong for everyone except herself. The narrator listens deeply, responding with quiet sincerity. He doesn't try to fix anything. He doesn't offer advice they didn't ask for. He simply becomes a calm presence, steady, warm, attentive. At one point, Hania glances between him and her mother and says softly, "You know, you're good for each other." It's not a romantic suggestion. It's an observation, honest and heartfelt. Miss Sima gives her a tender look. "And he's good for you too." Silence follows, but it's peaceful now, not heavy. Eventually, Miss Sima stands and walks toward the window, pulling the blinds slightly to let in more of the soft, rainy light. "We've all been carrying too much alone," she says. "Maybe it's time we stop doing that." Hania nods. The narrator nods too. Without planning it, they fall into an easy rhythm. Gathering the teacups, straightening the chairs, opening the window just a bit to let the fresh air in. Nothing dramatic happens. No confessions. No tension. Just a quiet understanding that their connection, whatever shape it takes, is something real, something good. They sit together near the window, sharing warm tea refills, listening to the soft rain and breathing in the calm that finally settles over the room. 3 people, 3 hearts, a gentle, unexpected little unit held together not by romance, not by obligation, but by the kind of emotional closeness that's rare and deeply human. The morning ends differently than any of them expected. Not with chaos, not with distance, but with comfort. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more slow burn, emotional tales. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know which moment moved you the most. And hit the bell so you never miss a story that makes your heart race quietly.